With me is Chris Thomas. It's yeah, I know we're on part 3, but it's all good stuff. I think people want to know these things, and we've been doing the airport, which is obviously one thing. We've got our own situation in Douglas with what's going on there with the arrangements for the boat and all that. But let's just quickly talk on Liverpool, shall we? Because I didn't have time to see it when I was in Liverpool the other week. I was really trying to get down there. It looks like it's coming along. It's obviously well over budget for the original, but we were talking, or people were talking about having it for TT this year. So should we try that one first? Will it be open for TT?
No, I think most recently it was autumn. Before that, it was summer. Before that, it was 2021. Yeah. It won't be open. It won't be open for TT.
You said June at some stage, didn't you?
I said June, and then
so late June.
I think my predecessor said June just as he was leaving, and then I ended back. So where we are is at a certain as the steamed packet. I meet the steam packet regularly, and we'll be making a joint announcement about boats and ports at the right time, when everything's more certain than it is now. So, do you want me to try an update, and then you can follow up what I tell you? So essentially, in terms of what happened in the past, because this project's been going on since 2016, clearly that's when we appointed our private project manager, and then contractors were appointed and designs were made and so on. That's been going on since 2016. You could argue it was going on even before that with the Tynwald reports. So the Public Accounts Committee has got an investigation into all of that, and DOI has provided lots and lots of information to those. But I think the Public Accounts, and they were supposed to report in January. I've got no problem with them not reporting, because it would be hard for them to report until we've actually finished the project. So that's, what happened in the past, line of questioning dealt with. Where we are now is that we have a standard, what's called pain gain share target cost mechanism contract with the contractors, the DOI and Isle of Man government, are the client for the Liverpool Ferry Terminal, and we're in a difficult position in terms of the normal operations of that standard NEC Type 4 Option C contract. That's where we are.
Difficulties. So.
Well, the terminals. The terminal on the ground is going along swimmingly. I think that's to the stage now where you'd want it to be, where Visit Isle of Man are planning their trips over there, where we're making sure that the disabled toilet facilities, the new caring changing room, not changing rooms, but the sort of hoists and things that will make a brand new will make a huge difference to a great many people when they travel. And that's all going fine. The difficulty, it's quite well known, the difficulty is the Mersey has been throwing challenges at the contractor, because there is silt in the Mersey like there is in the Neb, and those sorts of part. The sea is less forgiving.
It's also got issues, but
yeah. So that's where we are.
Okay.
So the contractors are working. Project managers are managing the contract process, and
can we stay on the old berth? I mean, that's always been the big question, was it? Could we be that situation where there's, especially for TT, there is no Liverpool option? Or
we got a good steam. We got a good steam packet, and they'll manage their sailings.
Can we stay on the old berth?
Well, we are using the old berth.
I thought that was running out because they wanted it for something else.
Well, these are the sorts of things the Public Accounts Committee will have to look at eventually.
Are you assuring us, though, right here, right now, that TT will be okay?
Yeah,
there will be something from Liverpool.
I'm not worried about the steam packet. We've got a good steam packet, and we're working.
Liverpool. the steam packet. I'm talking about the landing facilities.
I can't comment on how the steam packet's going to run its ferry services. That's a deal between with the
they've got to land people somewhere, right?
And they don't comment about our ferry terminal, but we will be making joint announcements, and I've got no reason to not believe that the timetable is not going to be followed exactly.
Okay, as a quick aside, I'm going to try and fire a few more. I was going through the old material I've done, and it was years ago. I think it was Mr. Skelly was charged at the time, whatever, about here, the sea terminal in the Isle of Man, and getting it more use by the public, because obviously you've still got all the civil servants in those beautiful offices. I mean, I know there was problems with asbestos probably, but that is a really gold standard place to put a restaurant together, albeit it doesn't revolve. I know this is way before your time, but there was this sort of momentum to move civil servants out and give it more of a public feel. And let's face it, over the years, having the coffee shops in there and all that, it has made a huge difference to its usability during the daytime. Any more thoughts on that, or was it something that's off your radar?
That was in the Douglas Master Plan, the future of its uses. So I think DOI tried to let the Crow's Nest out as a restaurant. I think there were a couple of issues. The first one is it's a circular staircase, and modern disability.
Well, there's a lift as well.
But you can't use a lift in the event of an emergency, and it's much harder to get people.
Well, that can't be the biggest.
And the second issue was to do with things like open space access. I think one of the potential tenants had an issue about not having anywhere for smokers and that sort of stuff. So therefore it was tried, and now what we have up there is we have what's called the Marine Operations Centre. I saw on that radio station we never talk about. I saw that they have a newscast this morning from the Marine Operations Centre, which now from the top, from the Crow's Nest, you now actually have a visibility over all of the Douglas Bay, and they actually can control all the bridges and all of the harbours and things like that.
Make a great studio for TV, but we're now there. That view is such a money shot.
If you've got money and you want to come and rent and tenant it.
When I move out of here, which is soon by the looks of it, we will talk about it.
So anyhow, the terminal, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Ugland from the steam packet would always say that the terminal needs work. The DOI is always looking for how it uses its public estate, because and Manx Development Corporation, I think it's relatively well known. They've tried to take forward the Central Douglas Master Plan, and that would include perhaps a new ferry terminal and new opportunities. And we potentially have a car park on Parade Street. So there's all these possibilities that are very much in the melting pot. Another issue is that you're going to ask me perhaps about buses.
I was going to say bus station,
So bus station was always is part of what's called a Section 13 agreement with the Lord Street developers across the road on the Lord Street site, and I've made some good progress, as have they, in terms of getting that closer to fruition. It's not quite what some people might think of as a bus station. It's a bus information centre, toilet facilities, bus stops, and that's work in progress. The Chief Minister's got grand plans, as has the Treasury Minister, because he chairs what's called the Brownfield Regeneration Steering Group. DOI has lots of legal responsibilities in all this area because we own some of the land. We agree what's called Section 13 agreements with developers. I think there can be exciting things happening around Lower Douglas.
10 years ago was going to be just in Victoria Street, undercovers.
I would hope that the information set, we made arrangements with the owners such that they, if they wanted, could make announcements about the sorts of deals that we've done. But
so we might get a bus station sometime.
Well, an information centre is the legal obligation.
Interchange, or whatever the word is.
So it's an information centre. It's toilets, it's staff welfare. It's on Lord Street with bus stops, and that's part of the Lord Street approved planning permission. Okay. So
very quickly. Just that on this sort of thing, just down there, Victoria Street, that crossing did take a long time. You budgeted 20 weeks. I think it even went over that, didn't it, in the end? Or was it around there? I mean, are you happy with that sort of progress?
I think they were unhappy with what they discovered under the ground, because it's the old Manx problem, which is nobody knows what's under the ground. Okay. And we've got closures over the nights, haven't we, in coming weeks to resurface the rest of the road.
Again, people are commenting, why did you do the whole thing at one go?
Again, I'm sure the public is noticing all the amount of work that's going on in Douglas and the rest of the island, because we have fought really hard for our highways budget, despite the fact that our roads are in relatively good condition according to Treasury and in their strategic infrastructure needs assessment.
You've only got all the money for car tax, right? You could spend all that yourself.
We got an extra 300,000 from car tax, although it went up by 10% for most people, and we put it on electric vehicle owners. That's what makes it really grumpy. That's what makes it really grumpy, infinite for you. But basically, we gave away loads because we moved over to a 6% option and a 6 month tax option. So that's quite expensive for us.
I suppose it's EVs. I mean, the hits has to happen, obviously.
But we'll be consulting people like you this coming year, because in the past we have proposed banding, because some people have really expensive EVs and some people have cheaper EVs, and is it fair that they all pay £65? I have said we'll be calling for evidence about how we should begin banding EVs, because ultimately the average person, to raise the amount of money that we think we need to spend on highways to keep them maintained where they are, needs to pay £200 for their vehicle, and you're still paying a lot less than £200 with your £65.
I paid a lot more for the car in the first place, but anyway, let's to make it personal. Car discs, I mean, we've still got car discs here, and that's now seems more and more of this thing that the UK got rid of it. That must have saved a lot of people's jobs or whatever. We still haven't gone that way.
We are in that process. We are in the process of putting in a direct debit and moving to that system, but Treasury's got to find the capital funds to do that project.
Because you have the scanner, the number plate scanners around the island, which you use to find out.
We would love to bring in ANPR for number plate recognition. We would love to move over to online discs, but then you would be leading the campaign that certain people would launch to preserve the post offices that are no longer getting money from issuing.
Well, we talk about the amount of people working in civil service has gone up massively over the years. But anyway. On a very serious note,
postmasters aren't civil servants,
or mistresses. A serious note about the roads. I walked past Aggo's Leave again the other day.
Okay.
Obviously, clearly that incredibly rare
Tragic.
incident happened at the two sidecars and the deaths at exactly the same point. And it's now had tons of consultations and reports, and I've seen many people down there all sorts of days and nights looking at it. It was just a coincidence, is what they came back with.
And the coroner made the statements when they were closing the cases and so on. So there's not much more I can say.
Are you comfortable, though? Is I suppose my point. If anything happens this year, I mean, honestly, if anything happens near there,
I'll say 3 points. First of all, it's a tragic, and everybody is affected by it. The second point I would say is that this year the ACU asked the DOI to do work around the course, and although it's been incredibly tricky for us, and at one point I was looking to take lots of flack because we were working on the Solby Strait at the same time we were working on the mountain, the same time DEFA were chopping down trees in Glen Helen, but
joined up thinking normally does come to mind at
and
that
that's
point.
why we had to join it all up. It's absolutely mathematical and joined up. We actually had to coordinate it all.
So you're saying Addersley was not on their list?
So that wasn't there wasn't. We're doing all the work that we've been asked for. Even brought forward some that we didn't think was needed this year, could have been next year to accommodate ACU demands. And then the third thing I would say is that we really need to make sure that we look at all of the roads, because it's not only the course that matters.
And as I said, there's been lots of, I mean, mostly probably from your department, going down there, doing lots of surveying, I suppose. And as far as I know, nothing's happened there. They haven't skimmed. You're saying they haven't altered anything. It's exactly the same, because it was done before last year's TT, and that's when, of course, those accidents happened. So there's a lot of people joining dots here that you say there shouldn't be.
I know even less about motorcycle racing. I go along, I'm a fan and all of that. Persuaded some very important people recently to become volunteers, and hope they do. And I'll tell you more about that later on. But basically, my understanding is the ACU can do notes to riders, or we can do the work, and we've done the work in lots and lots of places, and I imagine there'll be all sorts of notes, but I don't know how that.
I mean, we just hope nothing happens there, I suppose. I mean, again, it could be another coincidence. We don't call it, but that would seriously.
I will make another point. Another point, because the saddest I've been in my last year as a minister was when one of my political colleagues went on a media station and talked about highways officers being almost criminal for not having done something out of a school, and somebody else was talking about highways officers who think they know best. And I just want understanding from people, especially my political colleagues, that highways officers do go along to coroners' sessions, and they do feel personally when people have serious accidents, even die, and it's not nice to be accused by a political colleague of being almost criminal.
And that's why it's a hard subject to talk about. Even when last year when I asked the Chief Minister about a week or two after the events, I mean, I had the amount of feedback, and not good feedback. How dare I was even asking the questions about the safety of the TT. I mean, you can only do so much. But we'll park this one for now. But it's going to be on people's minds when the TT starts. There's no question about it. Especially the sidecars. What is the fair coming?
Is the fair coming? You haven't asked me that as yet.
Well, you were going to pay for them to come this time, were you?
No, well, DfE has paid for the administrative process in the past. DfE declined. We just give permission for various things, and we've always said we will give permission if we get asked.
Is it coming?
Well, as far as I know, there is a local businessman who's applying for permissions and things like that. On the promenade, yeah.
Oh, thanks for that. On the promenade, I mean, I don't know if there's any more you want to add. I mean, the prom is still got some remedial work doing, I think.
Well, basically, just as DOI has got, as DOI, we're trying to get the public to understand what we need to do and what they want us to do on the highways, and to get the money for it. So likewise at the airport, likewise on the buses, likewise on the Heritage Rail, likewise on flood risk management.
How's the prom? How is the prom?
The prom, I announced in the House of Keys that over the whole life of the promenade contract there were 900 defects or thereabouts. 50 of those remain. You will have seen, given where you live, that there has been work on the promenade fixing some defects.
Sure, there's been. I mean, there have been new holes or just going down manhole covers. But
so basically, one of them was in the middle of the roundel, where they were raising the manhole cover as far as I could see, and then putting it in line. Yeah. They've been taking it on the crossings. They've been taking out some mixed up black and white sets. They've been repairing different bits. So thank you to the
And the
contractor.
telcos removing, I think, a couple of the old boxes, which it was bonkers they stayed there, because I don't think anyone could have used them for years.
And we've worked with some of the hoteliers and residents to put in place some better seats in terms of the bus stops.
Yes.
I think I have a working relationship with Mr. Guard and Mr. Brindley at the moment, and Mrs. Kane about the horse trams along the railway, because ultimately it's a couple of £1 million if we're looking at reinstating the tracks to the sea terminal. So the promenade, we've still got a lot of work to do. The pink concrete is less than ideal.
Sure. Less than ideal?
Yeah, very much so.
That's putting it mildly, isn't it? I mean, that's caused so many headaches, and God
knows
as I say, how much money extra to get it sorted.
It's a standard NEC contract, and that contract is still live, so you can't draw.
Okay, horse trams. Then what? What about horse trams? You're going for the whole length, are you? Well, is that your point, or is that this being pressured on you?
A very clever person on Facebook said recently that the whole thing shouldn't have started like it started, and then the change of minds shouldn't have taken place like they did, and I completely agree.
You botched
back in 2013, I moved that we shouldn't start the promenade till we knew exactly what we were doing at every place. And what happened was I was told I was a fool and go back in my box because I'm only new to all this, and we're much better off doing it in phases. And they went in phases, and they kept changing the mind. And it cost millions to have the horse tram tracks in the middle. The original DOI proposal was to have them along the edge, but there was an amendment to a
still can't get past if there's a bus in front of you, can you?
So therefore, we have a plan. As part, in part, those horse tram tracks are also able to take electric trams from Ramsey. There is a plan that they should go all the way to the War Memorial from Ramsey. That's one of the things that we've asked the consultants to look at. Is there actually a demand for horse tram?
That's been a potential for many.
So those horse tram tracks in the middle of the road are slightly wider apart than they would have been if we hadn't been allowing for the electric trams that came up at the last minute. And then the 1.9 metre parking lanes along the side, they would have originally been 2.2 or whatever it is, 2.3, but they had to be made narrower.
So you're future-proofing it in case the electric railway goes along the promenade.
Ideally, there would have been more space. Buses can get past the horse trams. One thing for people to watch out, it's pretty selfish to park a big van or a big vehicle over the white lines next to the horse trams, because that makes it trickier for buses, and you have actually committed an offence. I'd hate you to start getting fixed penalty notices if you parked a vehicle over the.
I mean, as long as those blooming lights on the prom don't go AWOL, because sometimes I'm there at 7 o'clock in the morning and then I'm going through a phase, or this is last year by the way, going through a phase of red lights and there's no trams.
It didn't work ideally. We don't think it worked ideally, and and I'm sure the Public Accounts Committee will investigate it all. But basically, I think it's best to make up your mind and then stick to it. Okay. And if Liverpool Ferry Terminal or the Promenade would all be much better if we'd made up our mind.
We're covering loads here. Can I quickly ask about connected villages? I only brought that up in my head because I thought I haven't heard about it for ages. Did it work out? Is it still going? The taxi driver's happy now? Are you picking people up in the middle of nowhere and it's all tickly-boo and we don't hear anything more about it?
No, there are changes that have happened, and we are more selective on demand responsive transport. We do deal with coaches in a different way. So I did come in June and said buses were a priority, and I promised that we're going to run our scheduled bus services reliably, even though we're contributing to the hugely valuable cruise ship tourism business, and also we are beginning to think about how we serve Foxdale and Derby and all the other communities.
You're looking at electric buses in the sense that you bought one over anyway?
Over the next 3 or 4 years, we'll be looking at a bus fleet. We haven't bought any buses since 2019. We don't have any money in the budget after to buy new buses.
How much are electric, by the way, compared with the good old diesel?
Much more.
I was assuming that might be the answer.
From memory, I mean, I do have a good memory, but from memory, I think it was £500,000 as opposed to 300,000 or something. I forget. I might be wrong. I might be getting that wrong. But I do remember that. I'm sure it's negotiable with the manufacturers, and depending. But I'm not the mayor of London.
I mean, we are going a heck of speed here. I do apologise, but there's so many things. FOI responses, the way you've been dealing with, not you, but the department, getting some criticism, and back to that lady and the way she was treated by your staff.
Is there an FOI question about that? No,
it's not that one. But it was just this. I used to always ask the minister, how rogue is your department, and because in the past it had seemed that it was being run quite by the civil servants for the civil servants. I don't know if
I know they're not rogue now. We've got a new chief officer, and Emily Curfey. Open competition, open recruitment, many applicants. She's now the chief officer. We've got a new structure that we're putting in place. We're going through a process of transition, not transformation. So we're doing it differently from Manx Care and the Healthcare Board. In terms of the FOI responses, that's completely apolitical. I have noticed the 2 commissioner responses. The first one we just did exactly what he told him. That was to do with some property up in Ramsey. The second one...
Was it handled well, though? I mean,
well, I don't think we believe it was handled well. With hindsight, we only have 1 FOI officer. Right. Some parts of government have 2 or 3. We only have 1. Emily and myself agreed a recruitment freeze in October because at one point media were accusing us of having a forecast deficit of over 20 million. By the end of the year, we got it down to... probably less than 2 million as we closed the books, which is quite an achievement, and part of that was cost cutting in terms of energy, and we got some heroes around the public estate who reduced electricity usage and gas usage. We were pretty good at getting access to treasury funds because so many of our expenses were dependent on pay negotiations, electricity prices, gas prices, COVID related issues, and in the end we had a recruitment freeze, and one person.
You don't need so much money next year. You'll say
it seems to me that the public are demanding that we spend more on the airport, perhaps more on buses. We've still got to do the £2 fare trial in the next programme. Perhaps.
Well, let's keep going on that. Let's just do that. It worked, but it didn't work. I mean, it was mixed messaging. Mm-hmm. You were saying it was a success to some degree, but
it was a success.
Not many people took up the offer.
It was a success in as much as 150,000 paid £2 for their bus travel who would have paid a higher amount over the 5 months. It was a success in as much as the Go Saver cards were reduced. It wasn't a success in as much as people didn't move out of their cars and start using buses in great numbers.
How much did it cost you again?
Basically £50,000 to £55,000 a month, so basically £250,000 to £275,000.
And will you ever be able to get a ticket from Ramsey all the way down to Carstown, or do you still have to go through Douglas to get the second ticket?
So the bus leadership have been going around all the commissioners, and that's the sort of thing that they've been talking about.
That's sound odd, though, isn't it?
So you
can't go from one part of the island to the other without buying another ticket. I mean, is that right?
The ticketer system can do transfers, but the principle, and Mr. Longworth's was always that we wanted routes where you didn't have to get off the bus and change to another bus. So we have all these confusing routes. We are looking at alternative ways of doing those routes, and that's for this year. Okay. And basically, one of the successes of the £2 bus fare cap was 25 people do seem to have travelled every day from Ramsey to Douglas Moor. Would they go all the way? Would they go past the wonderful new city of Douglas beyond? Who knows? Perhaps Southerners only come to Douglas.
I don't know how many people want it, but it just seems like
Another one is the west to the south. People at the airport have made the point to me that it's much harder to get from Peel or Kirkmichael to the airport than it is from Douglas to the airport. We have, I can go on a bus for.
Okay. Let's wrap this up with just I mean, there's so many more things, but thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me. And I'm sorry I was so late.
That's all right. I'll book you way in advance. The landslide in Laxey, and how much worry are you there, because that road? Obviously, the road leading down to that cottage seems to be embedded into the road itself. We've had a look at it with the local MHK. Presumably, I think that might be safe. But is there a worry and feel of litigation that might have to happen, and eventually shut that road or something if things keep sliding?
The AG has issued a letter mentioning the position of the DOI, DEFA, DHA, probably amongst utilities. DOI were monitoring the highways issues. That's where we are. I mean, the reports that the officers have is that there isn't any threat to the highway issue, but we are monitoring it continuously, and it's a private matter between various landowners. We don't actually own any of the land.
Are you enjoying the job? I was asking the end of each interview.
Who would not enjoy a job? I get the chance to talk with people like you in such a pleasant and aggressive way.
Whatever. At least you're coming in, because it's harder and harder to get people to come in front of the cameras. I don't know what's going on. Our yearly chit chats. I didn't do many of them this year. They didn't want to come back to you did. Should we be worried about our main government and its direction and its openness, honesty and transparency?
Not from Chris Thomas and not from the DOI.
And we'll talk about when it's all finished.
There are certain things that we do need. What Chris Robertshaw might have called a conversazione, about a big talk, a big debate, and we need to have that, and how much we need to spend on the airport, how much we need to spend on public transport, how much we need to spend on highways, how we organise our sea services, what we do about flood risk, what we what we do about footpaths and working with our visitors are all crucial issues in infrastructure, and there's nothing. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I talk too much in terms of what's in my head and tell you all the information and try to answer every question I possibly can, and that's what we need to do, because we are spending a lot of people's money, a lot of, you know, at the end of the day it's people's money, it's not government's money. We didn't get a lot of it from Treasury, government, and then Tynwald this year. It went to other places. I'm not sure that balance is quite right, and so that's why I keep trying to take every opportunity to say, how much do you feel we need to spend at the airport? How much do we feel we need to spend on housing? How much do you feel we need to spend?
You're in the tent, so you can yell much louder than maybe other people can to try and make your pitch.
Perhaps I lose all of the time. But anyhow,
feel free to tell me about that sometime. Chris Thomas, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.